The Delaware and Hudson was formed in 1823 as a gravity railroad and canal company to transport anthracite coal from eastern Pennsylvania to New York City via the Delaware and Hudson rivers. The Stourbridge Lion, the first locomotive in the United States, began operation in 1829. Expansion of the rail system began in 1864, the leasing and acquisition of multiple local railroads, and by the 1886 the railroad stretched from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania to Montreal, Quebec. In 1974, New York State requests Amtrak restore Albany-Montreal service, but Amtrak does not have the equipment to support the service, so New York State decides to fund the service and underwrote renovations of passenger equipment, including rebuilding of the PAs with the new upgraded 2,400 horsepower prime movers. The newly renovated equipment set became the Adirondack to recognize the part played by New York in establishing the service. Service ended in March 1977. The Adirondack was discontinued and replaced by Amtrak Turboliners. The PAs briefly entered freight service, but were hampered by their small 1,200-gallon fuel tanks. They were later leased to the MTA for commuter service in Boston until being sold to Mexico in 1978. All four deteriorated or were involved in wrecks. On April 28, 2000, the shells of 16 and 18 were returned to the U.S. 16 was slated for static display in Santa Fe war bonnet colors at the Museum of American Railroad, Frisco, Texas. 18 underwent restoration, painted as nickel plate number 190 by a private owner with the goal of operation. The locomotive was acquired by Genesee Valley Transportation in March 2003 and moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where restoration will continue. The Delaware and Hudson, in combination with the New York Central, operated 2 trains with service from New York City to Montreal, Quebec, Canada. The trains were the daytime Laurentian and the overnight Montreal Limited, operating between Grand Central Terminal and Windsor Station. Operation from New York City to Albany, New York was handled by the New York Central. From Albany, the train proceeded to Montreal along the shoreline of Lake Champlain, with power provided by the Delaware and Hudson. Power was typically provided by Alco RS3s until 1968. In 1968, at a time when most railroads were downgrading passenger service, the Delaware and Hudson instead embarked on modernizing service. It purchased Pullman standard stainless cars from the Denver Rio Grande and Western, and leased 2 dome cars from the Canadian Pacific. For motive power, they acquired 4 Alco PA2s from the Santa Fe. Once on the property, it was decided to retain the iconic Santa Fe war bonnet with champagne blue replacing the Santa Fe red. The D&H units numbered 16, 17, 18, and 19. At Albany, through cars supplied by New York Central and until 1970 Penn Central, from Grand Central, a tavern lounge and coach were attached to the waiting Delaware and Hudson consist for the journey north. Service was coach only, but food service was available in the leased dome diners, which were repainted to the Delaware and Hudson colors. power was at time a single PA, but they were frequently double-headed, especially in the winter, to provide adequate steam for heat. On one notable occasion, when the train was handled by a single unit during the winter, it had to have an assist leaving Montreal, as it had become frozen to the rails. Operation ceased in 1971 with the formation of Amtrak.
Did you start? Yeah, okay.